The clock has run out, the legal barriers have crumbled, and the 2,487 pages that Prince Harry spent millions to bury are finally staring us in the face. It is July 2026, and the silence from the Duke and Duchess of Sussex is deafening. For 6 long years, a shroud of secrecy protected the immigration records of the king's second son, but that protection vanished on June 12th. The Washington, D.C. federal court has officially unsealed the archive, and the reality within these documents is far more explosive than any headline we have seen over the last decade. This is no longer a matter of tabloid speculation or royal gossip. This is a black and white federal record that reveals exactly what happens when an international brand built on truth collides with the cold, hard reality of the law. Before we dive into the wreckage of this legal disaster, do me a quick favor to help the truth reach more people. Hit that like button right now, and if you believe in accountability, subscribe to the Royal Audit. It takes 1 second, but it ensures you never miss a chapter of this unfolding investigation. The tragedy of this situation lies in a massive, self-inflicted trap. Harry and Meghan have wasted millions of dollars on elite legal teams to prevent this very day from arriving, yet it was their own arrogance that sealed their fate. They banked $135 million from a memoir that promised raw, unfiltered honesty. But in a move of profound irony, those same printed words have now been turned into evidence against them by the Department of Homeland Security. For years, Harry's legal representatives reportedly argued behind closed doors that his public admissions of drug use were nothing more than a literary device, a play for sympathy and book sales, rather than a confession of fact. We are told that during the private hearings, the legal team desperately tried to convince the judge that Harry's memoir was a work of creative storytelling rather than a sworn statement of history. They essentially asked the court to believe that the prince is a liar in print so that he could remain a resident in practice. This is the collapse of a toxic PR strategy that has finally reached its expiration date. For the audience watching this unfold, especially those who have followed the Duchess's carefully crafted image, the psychological dissonance is staggering. They spent years selling privacy as a commodity, turning their personal lives into a multi-million-dollar industry. Yet, the moment the legal system demanded transparency regarding their entry into the United States, they begged for the very privacy they had already sold to the highest bidder. The black ink of government redactions officially expired last month. The 2,487 pages are open, and what the mainstream media is intentionally ignoring over these past few weeks is exactly what we are going to dissect right now. Stick with me for the next 15 minutes. Because this top-secret audit will point out precisely which lie triggered the deportation investigation against the Duke of Sussex. As we look at the documents, the narrative they tried to spin falls apart. In past statements, Meghan reportedly assured their inner circle that their status was untouchable, asserting that the world would never see the inner workings of their application because of their status. But the law does not recognize titles when it comes to visa integrity. Please, leave a comment below and let me know. Do you think the law should treat a prince differently than any other immigrant? I want to read your thoughts. Stay tuned, because the deeper we go into these 2,487 pages, the more we realize that the curtain hasn't just been pulled back, it has been torn to shreds. The illusion of royal immunity has finally been shattered by the very laws Prince Harry thought he could sidestep. For years, the Duke of Sussex, in his memoir, Harry framed his substance use in Los Angeles as a courageous and therapeutic journey, a raw attempt at healing that he believed the world should applaud. But there is a massive divide between a literary narrative and a legal reality. While Harry viewed his actions as a path to enlightenment, the United States federal law categorizes them as criminal grounds for inadmissibility. The double standard at play here is what truly fuels the public's sense of betrayal. To understand the gravity of this special treatment, we only have to look back at the case of lifestyle icon Nigella Lawson. She is a woman of immense influence and poise, yet she was famously barred from boarding a flight to the United States at London's Heathrow Airport. Why? Because of a historical admission of drug use made during a court case in the United Kingdom. She hadn't even committed a crime on American soil, yet the system functioned exactly as intended. She was treated as a risk and denied entry. Now, contrast that with the Duke of Sussex. We are talking about a man who openly admitted to using Schedule I controlled substances, some of it allegedly occurring at the luxury home of actress Courtney Cox right here in the United States. Despite these public admissions, his visa was reportedly approved with lightning speed, a mere 14 days in March 2020. While the rest of the world was locking down and families were being separated by closed borders, the Duke was receiving the red carpet treatment from the Department of Homeland Security. The strategic failure of the Sussexes lies in their decision to commercialize their own illegal behavior. They didn't just live their lives. They sold their indiscretions to the highest bidder on global television and in printed books. They calculated that the American public would be so enamored with their truth that we would overlook the blatant inequality of the law. They underestimated the deep-seated American value of fairness. We are now seeing the fallout of a couple who broadcasted their defiance of federal regulations to a global audience, never imagining that the very transparency they used for profit would eventually become the evidence used for their downfall. The Department of Homeland Security shielded Harry for 6 long years, fighting tooth and nail to keep his application out of the public eye. But when those 2,487 pages were finally unsealed last month, the world finally began to see the answer to whether he checked yes or no on those critical disclosure boxes. However, as shocking as the drug admissions are, they might not even be the most damaging part of this file. The federal records suggest a much deeper level of deception that goes beyond personal habits. As we look closer at the timeline of their arrival and the paperwork filed during their transition to California, a new pattern emerges. While the media has been hyper-focused on the medical and character disclosures, the most horrifying lie buried in this archive isn't found in a health declaration. It is hidden within a complex matrix of financial filings and visa categories that Meghan herself may have inadvertently exposed. The question now isn't just about what Harry did in his past, but what the couple claimed about their future earnings and professional intent, a lie that could carry even heavier consequences than a confession of youthful rebellion. The most dangerous weapon in the hands of a federal prosecutor isn't a secret recording or a hidden witness. It is a simple comparison of 2 conflicting statements made by the same person. When you are dealing with the United States government, consistency is not just a virtue, it is a legal requirement. As we peel back the layers of these unsealed records, we find a catastrophic failure of synchronization between Prince Harry's official legal filings and the media narrative he and Meghan carefully constructed for the public. This lack of alignment didn't just hurt their reputation, it systematically destructed the legal integrity of Harry's visa status. Let's look at the forensic discrepancy that is currently setting the legal world on fire. In March 2020, as the world was shutting down, Harry was in the midst of a high-speed immigration process. To secure that rapid approval and ensure he wouldn't be flagged as a public charge, Harry was required to formally declare that he possessed stable, ample financial resources. The government needs to know that an immigrant can support themselves and their family without relying on the American taxpayer. We can almost hear the narrative voiceover of that legal meeting, with Harry's representatives presenting a portrait of a wealthy, independent prince, assuring the Department of Homeland Security that his coffers were full and his future was financially secure. Based on these declarations of wealth, his application was expedited. However, the image they sold to the government was completely at odds with the victimhood narrative they sold to the media only 4 months later. By July 2020, the Duchess of Sussex was giving interviews that painted a very different picture. In a now infamous exchange with The Cut, Meghan reportedly confirmed a startling reality. She spoke of a time when they were essentially unemployed, had no consistent income, and were merely window shopping for their $14 million Montecito mansion because, at that moment, it was an expense they simply could not afford. The Duchess recalled the feeling of looking at a home they were told they couldn't have, describing a period of financial uncertainty that sounds nothing like the financially stable declaration required for a visa just weeks prior. This is where the audit turns from a PR disaster into a potential criminal investigation. You cannot legally submit a document to the federal government stating you are fully self-sufficient, only to have your spouse tell the world's media shortly after that you are unemployed and struggling to afford a home. These 2 testimonies do not just contradict each other, they collide with explosive force. The documents unsealed last month suggest that the government is now looking at whether Harry falsified his financial standing to gain entry, a violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 1001. This isn't a minor clerical error. Making false statements to a federal agency carries a heavy price. The risk of up to 5 years in federal prison and a permanent ban from entering the United States. For the audience watching this, the sense of injustice is palpable. Everyday immigrants spend years and thousands of dollars ensuring every decimal point on their paperwork is accurate, knowing that one mistake could lead to deportation. Yet, the Duke of Sussex allegedly managed to bypass these hurdles, while his own wife was publicly undermining his legal claims. This forensic audit of their 2020 books shows that their desire to be seen as relatable and struggling to the public has directly jeopardized their legal right to remain on American soil. But as grave as these financial discrepancies are, they are only the tip of the iceberg. You see, you cannot just lie to the government and expect no consequences unless someone very powerful is looking the other way. The records reveal that as the walls began to close in, a high-stakes political rescue operation was quietly launched in April of this year to save the Duke from the consequences of his own paperwork. What was in those redacted communications that required such an urgent, secret intervention? The depth of the hypocrisy revealed in these 2,487 pages is perhaps the most bitter pill for the public to swallow. For years, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have meticulously crafted a brand centered on being victims of a cold, archaic institution. They have sat on global stages, denouncing the firm and the crown, portraying themselves as survivors who had to escape an oppressive system to find freedom in America. But the newly unsealed federal files tell a story of calculated exploitation. While they were publicly burning bridges with the monarchy, they were behind the scenes quietly leveraging the very same royal status to circumvent United States immigration laws. The most damning revelation in this entire archive is the disclosure of the specific visa category Harry used to enter the country in March 2020. The records indicate that Harry did not enter on a standard spousal or high-ability 1 visa, which would have subjected him to rigorous questioning about his self-admitted substance use. Instead, he reportedly utilized an on-diplomatic visa. This specific classification is strictly reserved for individuals performing official government business on behalf of a sovereign state. Think about the sheer audacity of that timing. In the very week Harry was announcing his secession from the royal family and declaring his independence, he was allegedly using a diplomatic shortcut that only a high-ranking member of that same monarchy could access. We can almost hear the conversation in the private lounges of the airport, where Harry's representatives likely argued that his royal blood should grant him a free pass from the questions every other immigrant must answer. He used the privilege of his father's crown as a shield to bypass the security gates of the United States, even as he was preparing to pocket millions of dollars by denouncing that same crown. He exploited the system he claimed to hate to get a seat at a table he hadn't earned through the standard process. But why did it take until July 2026 for this information to finally reach the light of day? The timeline suggests a strategic and highly coordinated cover-up by the federal government. The case had been stagnating in the courts for months, with delays that seemed inexplicable to legal observers. However, when we look at the diplomatic calendar, the reason becomes crystal clear. In late April 2026, King Charles III made a historic state visit to the United States. It was a delicate moment of international diplomacy, and the administration could not afford to have the king's visit overshadowed by a massive scandal involving his son's potential visa fraud. The documents suggest that the unsealing was intentionally pushed back to ensure the headlines remained respectful while the king was on American soil. They waited until the state dinners were over and the royal jet had cleared United States airspace. But now, it is July. The party is over. The diplomatic immunity has faded, and the protection that was once afforded to the Duke of Sussex has been officially withdrawn. He is no longer a political asset to be protected. He has become a legal liability that the government can no longer afford to hide. They used the crown as a selfish shortcut while they were busy cashing checks from the media for dragging that same crown through the mud. But as the political powers pull their hands away, the harsh reality of July 2026 is forcing Sussex Limited Liability Company to face a brutal truth. The protection is gone, the records are open, and the financial engine that fueled their lifestyle has hit a catastrophic wall. Their cash flow has reportedly reached an alarming low, and the next revelation in these files points to exactly where the money went and why there is none left to fight what is coming next. The luxury gates of Montecito can hide many secrets, but they cannot hide a balance sheet that is bleeding red. As we enter July 2026, the unsealed immigration records have provided more than just a glimpse into Prince Harry's legal status. They have inadvertently exposed the total collapse of the Sussex financial empire. For the last 6 years, the world has watched a masterclass in catastrophic money management. Harry and Meghan did not just spend their wealth, they aggressively overspent to inflate a lifestyle that was never sustainable. They tried to maintain the optics of a royal household on the budget of a fading Hollywood celebrity, and the results of this lifestyle inflation have finally reached a breaking point. The numbers revealed in this recent audit are staggering. The couple's net worth has plummeted in a freefall from an estimated $60 million down to a precarious $35 million. While that might still sound like a fortune to the average person, it is a drop in the ocean when compared to the fixed costs that are currently devouring their assets. Their mortgage alone is a staggering $100,000 every single month. Their property taxes add another $280,000 to the bill annually. But the true silent killer of their wealth is their private security detail, which reportedly drains between $4 million and $5 million every year. We are told that during a series of tense meetings with financial advisors in late 2025, Harry was presented with a stark choice: scale back the security or face insolvency within 24 months. The narrative from those close to the couple suggests that Meghan was adamant, reportedly telling their team that any reduction in their security presence would be seen by the world as a public admission of defeat. She allegedly argued that they could not afford to look lesser than the working royals they left behind. So, instead of cutting costs, they doubled down on the image, even as their core income streams were being frozen or terminated. The collapse of their professional ventures has been swift and brutal. The Spotify deal is a ghost of the past. Netflix has officially axed the high-stakes Polo project, realizing that the public's appetite for royal leisure content has reached an all-time low. Perhaps the most humiliating blow to the Sussex brand is the collapse of Harry's speaking fees. At his peak, the Duke could command $1 million for a single appearance. Today, in July 2026, that figure has cratered to a mere $50,000. To put that into perspective, the brand value of the son of the King of England is now being outbid and outvalued by corporate textbook authors like Jim Collins. The strategy was always to sell the royal brand to fund an American dream, but the market has spoken, and the brand is now considered toxic. While they were busy fighting legal battles to keep their records sealed, their financial foundation was eroding. The Sussex Limited Liability Company is no longer a powerhouse. It is a cautionary tale of what happens when ego dictates a budget. But here is the most terrifying number of all, the one that the Sussexes desperately hoped would stay buried in the court transcripts. Look at this calculation. The total legal fees for Harry's relentless and often losing litigation battles across 2 continents have now surpassed $38 million as of this month. Take a moment and let that sink in. $38 million spent on lawyers, while their remaining net worth sits at $35 million. In the world of high finance accounting, there is no room for emotion or royal titles. They are, by the most basic definition of the word, officially broke. And as the money runs out, the silence from the allies who once stood by them is becoming the loudest sound in California. The greatest strategic blunder in the history of celebrity crisis management has finally reached its inevitable conclusion. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle built a multi-million-dollar empire on the belief that star power and carefully scripted PR narratives could eventually overwhelm the rigid machinery of federal law. They operated under the delusion that if they were loud enough, charming enough, or victim enough, the rules that apply to every other immigrant on American soil would simply bend in their favor. But as we sit here in July 2026, the 2,487 pages of unsealed records have proven them catastrophically wrong. On a United States Government Form DS-160, there are no lines for emotional arguments, no checkboxes for royal titles, and absolutely no exceptions for the son of a king. The unsealing of these records last month has effectively locked Harry into a logical trap of his own construction. There is no middle ground left, no room for creative interpretation. Through his own admissions in his memoir, he has forced the legal system to scrutinize a binary choice that now defines his future. If the records show that Harry checked the box, marked yes, admitting to his history of substance use, then the American legal system is forced to confront a brutal reality of class inequality. We would be looking at a world where a lifestyle icon like Nigella Lawson is barred from entry for a minor confession, while a prince is ushered through in 14 days with a wink and a nod from the Department of Homeland Security. This revelation would permanently stain Harry's image, turning him into the ultimate symbol of the very unfair privilege he claims to despise. On the other hand, if the records show that he checked the box marked NO, the consequences move from social hypocrisy to federal crime. If he claimed a clean record on his visa application, while later selling stories of drug use to the highest bidder in a book, he has committed perjury against the United States government. This would mean the entire foundation of Sussex Limited Liability Company, a brand built on the pillars of radical honesty and living your truth, was constructed on a lie told to federal agents. The man who lectured the world on integrity would be revealed as a fraud under the penalty of law, facing permanent inadmissibility and potential criminal charges. This isn't just an immigration issue anymore. It is the total collapse of a global brand. The ripple effects are already visible. From major corporate partners like Boeing distancing themselves to the Australian government slashing budgets for their collaborative projects, the prestige of the Sussex name has evaporated. Even their most senior aides, the people who were supposed to navigate them through this storm, have resigned in a steady stream of departures, reportedly exhausted by the couple's refusal to accept legal reality. The final irony of this entire saga is the math. Harry has spent over $38 million in legal fees across 2 continents, fighting a desperate, multi-year war to bury a truth that he himself chose to publish for a paycheck. He paid millions to hide what he already sold for millions. This audit of the unsealed files shows that the curtain hasn't just been pulled back, it has been torn down by the very hands that tried to hold it closed. The game is over, the records are public, and the Sussex truth has finally met the federal truth. If you want to see the specific financial documents and the breakdown of that $38 million legal bill, make sure you stay tuned for our deep dive into the Sussex accounting records. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the Royal Audit to ensure you are here when we reveal the next layer of this investigation. Your support keeps this independent audit going. Leave a comment below. Do you think Harry should face the same consequences as any other immigrant? Let us know, and we'll see you in the next analysis.